Welcome to the Always for the New Age podcast, where we weave the threads of traditional living into the tapestry of modern day life. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm a naturopath, herbalist, and passionate plant lover here to discuss topics such as daily ritual, intentional living, witchcraft, herbal astrology, plus sharing interviews with inspiring guests, and so much more. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a podcast review if you enjoy my content. I wish to honour and express my deepest gratitude to the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which I live and record, the Wandjirabara people. I want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and their continued connection to the land, sea and community. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello everybody and welcome back to today's episode of the Always for the New Age podcast. My name is Hannah and today I have the wonderful pleasure of speaking with Harmonie. So Harmonie is a passionate herbalist, she is a homesteading mama and the founder of the Plant Wonder Collective and Botanical Anthology magazine. So thank you so much for joining me today, Harmonie, and it's wonderful to finally get to actually speak to you face to face.
I know. I love the interaction. I know you very well through your words, and now I get to put your face to those words.
So I met Harmonie through contributing to the Botanical Anthology magazine, which we'll definitely dive into later in this conversation. But it's been such a joy to write for your magazine, and it brings me a lot of happiness and gets to flex my creative mind a little bit, which is fun. Yeah. But for the people who don't know who you are, would you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a bit about your story and your journey with the plants?
Absolutely. So I am Harmonie O'Loughlin. I think, and I live in Western Massachusetts of the United States. So Hannah and I are, we were working together to figure out how our times aligned to have this conversation, which is such it's such an interesting concept to wrap your mind around.
Yes.
So I started studying plants in 2010. I kind of came that way through being interested in health. In my early career, I worked for natural and organic food companies. And so, but it was largely on the food side. And so over time, I became really interested in supporting well-being, through modalities like that. And I was on this precipice of deciding, do I do a holistic nutrition course? And I was actually thinking about taking weekly train trips down to New York City for this course because it was going to be the last one they were ever offering.
Oh my goodness.
Or to go to herb school. And I picked herb school. And so it was really that fork in the road and kind of, you can look back and think about those decisions and how you get to where you are. And so that was definitely one for me. But the same month that I started my apprenticeship, I also started a new job. And so I was largely in sales and marketing for those organic food companies. And this particular one meant I was even more so on the road and traveling, like very much a lifestyle job that just rules your world. And so I, over the years, I still had a garden and I got really into growing herbs or kind of foraging my lawn or local public areas that were accessible and making things for myself, family, friends, that sort of thing. But then once I was in full on nesting mode, when I was pregnant with my daughter in 2018, I really just dove in. And so I had these crazy baskets of preparations for labor and birth and postpartum and baby care. And so then I had my daughter and we were living in rural Wisconsin at the time. And it turns out there isn't a lot of baby care there, which I had no idea because I didn't previously have a baby. And I also couldn't really, nor did I want to go back to that kind of intense situation, I didn't think I could be the type of mom that I wanted to be. So I worked really part-time after she was born and I had a lot of baby holding. I could never put this baby down. She always wanted to be held. And so I started just having the herb books next to me, and I just kept kind of reading and working on my formulas. And I thought, well, I'm going to start making baby and mama care products, because if I hadn't had the forethought in that nesting phase, it never would have happened. And I would have had this baby, and I would have thought, how am I going to, heal myself, basically? I feel like I had this major bodily experience, birthing a baby.
Absolutely.
And recovering from that. And I'm running on 0 sleep. So there would have been no way I'm going to whip up a salve now, that was just not going to happen. So I thought, well, I think other moms are probably in that situation too. And so I started Flora's Feast with, so it was making the postpartum and baby care items. And then the pandemic hit, and, I didn't really have childcare anymore. I still had this baby I was always holding. So I didn't have computer time. And, so I expanded beyond that and started making some like facial care and other things. So I did that for a few years, but we also moved back to Massachusetts, and then again didn't have childcare. It was still the pandemic, and so I started trying to figure out ways that I could diversify what I was doing, and so I started looking for alternative ways to make connections online than just posting on Instagram. I mean, it was part of that, but really, how could I make it engaging? And so I thought, well, I've been really revived by studying plants again. And so I'll do a plant of the month, and that way I can make content for Flora's Feast. And I started telling a few friends, and then they wanted to participate. And so the idea of creating this herbal community was born. And so that's how Plant Wonder Collective came to be. And at first I thought, well, if we're going to study this plant, I'll find someone and say, can you do a tea every month? And can you do a salve? And can you do a craft? And that worked for a few months. But, everyone, life is life, and everyone is multitudes and has diverse interests. And so it was like, no, more creativity will happen when we're all just kind of doing our thing.
And so would you like to share a little bit more about the Plant Wonder Collective specifically? First of all, I actually also want to mention, I didn't know that Flora's Feast started with baby products. So that's actually new information for me, and how sweet. And definitely that preparation, I think, is a key part missing for a lot of people's postpartum. And there's several, societal reasons for that. And, everyone's situation is different, but definitely having those things on hand makes, not only I think put my mind at ease and puts other people's minds at ease, knowing that you have everything you need, but I think it just makes the whole process go so much more seamlessly. But how did this, the PWC, could you explain that more for people? What does that look like? And what's your plant of the month too this month?
Right. Currently it's nettle.
We love nettle.
This is actually the second time we are going to explore it. We did it very early on, and it's such a beloved plant that we thought after a few years, it's time to touch base with an old friend again. So
absolutely.
So Plant Wonder Collective really started as a way to create community and explore plants together, but also just to lift each other up. So, we have posting days where we interact on our own pages, and then, the Plant Wonder Collective handle is the repository of all of this work. So you can go there and see everything. But there's also activity that happens on all the individual contributors' pages throughout the course of the month. And so there was this duality of let's let this plant shine that we either already love or we're really curious about learning more about. And then also let's support each other in this kind of crazy Instagram world where people are just trying to be seen and heard, even to just the people who signed up, who followed them, who are there to follow them. They don't even always see you. No. And so, there's always this like game of how do I how do I get this in front of the people who want to see it? And so that's how Plant Wonder Collective started. And we just kind of kept carrying on because people really enjoyed participating. And I think there's some, accountability to each other too. And you don't have to participate every month, but just, it helps because most contributors, not all, but most over the course of time have been mothers. And so it's that way to kind of also take a little slice of life for yourself too, or keep up with something that's of your own interest that doesn't have to do with someone else.
Yes.
And so I think that's why people have also really enjoyed doing it too, because we have this like community and it's similar people over the course of time. And then it's like me time a little bit too.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, taking that little slice of time for yourself as a mum, especially if you're a herb passionate individual like we both are. But so anyone can participate on Instagram, is that what I'm hearing? But do you have a Patreon for Plant Wonder Collective as well?
We do. So on Instagram, we have people who sign up to be members, and all that means is you're kind of committing to doing it regularly. So we have an internal chat and we organize the days we're going to post and things like that. And when things are posted on the Plant Wonder Collective handle, we always say, like, if you want to participate, just use the same hashtag as us and tag us. And then we'll be happy to share your content too, because we'd love to see what you're doing. So anyone can participate in that way. And also if people want to become a member of the collective, that's always open too. It's just like, are you going to regularly want to participate most months of the year and join us,
Yeah.
And so then we decided over time, because there are some people who really want to dive in even further, that we would create a Patreon to enhance studies. And so this incentivizes the creators who like to write more in depth than you could just in a caption on Instagram. But also it helps any of our followers or readers, who want to dive into their own studies. And so we provide different downloadables and printables that have, graphics of the plant. So it's kind of beautifying your studies at the same time. And I like to say that you're sort of, if you participate in the month, you can sort of like create your own personal herb book as time goes on. And so we provide some information like a filled out plant profile, but then we provide a blank one. And so then you can do your reading too and see what books you have. You can explore the plants on your own, see what effects they might have for you, because that's can be, there's a lot of common ways that herbs respond to a body, but then every body is different. And so there's that component too. And then we try to follow the categories of our magazine, the the Botanical Anthology. And so through the study circle, we have kind of, exclusive articles to that platform. And so we try to make sure we have an apothecary article and a kitchen article, how to grow the plant, folklore or some other spiritual kind of way to connect with the plant. So we have a lot of those different ways that our readers and followers are typically used to hearing from us about topics about. And so we include that in the study circle as well.
And I think study circle is a really nice way of putting it, because it really is like that. And so if I was to summarize it for people through my experience too and my understanding of it, it really is a gentle way of beginning, or I guess enhancing and continuing on with your plant studies, rather than not everybody has the time or the finances to join in with a herb school and commit to 6 months, 12 months, or multiple years to get, certificates or qualifications. And like a lot of those schools are absolutely incredible. And, I have a bachelor degree, it's a 4-year degree. And, but something like this is great because I know so many people who are teachers, or they're, they work in retail, but they really want to learn about the plants. And they're not sure that they want to commit to a school, or they've got young
Mm-hmm.
kids and it doesn't make sense right now, but this is a way they can start to embark on that journey in a way that is kind of still a commitment and still getting you engaged with the community, but, isn't going to take up every spare moment of your time, which we know are few and far between, those moments when you have young kids. So it's a really, a lovely gentle entry or continuation for people. And so, like, I contributed this month with one of the Nettle posts on Instagram, and it's so fun because you can go and see everybody's unique perspective as well, and it opens your mind to different lenses of viewing plants. So like I touched on a little bit of astroherbalism or astrological herbalism in mine, and some people did like mocktail recipes that look so good, and somebody else is looking at it from a very scientific lens, and somebody's looking at it from like an emotional lens. So everybody's perspectives are so different, and what they come up with to share about the plant is so different, and that's something I have found really special about the Plant Wonder Collective. So let's talk about the Botanical Anthology, because that is how I kind of jumped into your world and kind of never left. So sorry, here I am.
I'm happy to be here.
But how did the BA come about? The BA is its nickname for anyone who's confused. Botanical Anthology.
We like
magazine.
Acronyms around here.
Keeps things simple. And so how did the BA come about, and how would you best describe it to someone who is brand new to the magazine?
Yes. Okay. So the Botanical Anthology is a plant-centered seasonal magazine. So it can, it is digital on our website, and depending on where you live, it can also potentially likely be available in print form. Currently, we're using Amazon's on-demand program, which isn't ideal for all reasons, but as a micro publisher, it is pivotal in being able to offer that option to people and not have an investment or stacks of magazines in the corner trying to, so the way the magazine came about was over time, besides just the Plant Wonder Collective, I was looking at other ways to make connections with other people. And so I wrote for some different publications, and I really liked writing. Like, it had a certain spark for me. And I always loved the magazine format. I mean, here in the US, Martha Stewart is a very well-known,
she's well known here too.
And so, and I mean, I was a teenager subscribing to that woman's magazine because I thought it was so cool. Like, I just loved magazines. I loved cooking, and it was amazing to me. And so it really, the format spoke to me, because similar to what you were saying about how you might not have time for herb school, you might not have time to dedicate to a really long program, you might not have the finances as well. That's a big thing. I find like magazines sort of correlate in that way too. Like you probably, like for people who want more than a caption can fit, but maybe you're too tired to read a book. Like there is a hurdle in your mind to sit with a book that's like a textbook, when you maybe only have a half hour a day to yourself. So I really loved that the way the format of a magazine works is you can get creative with the different types of articles you're offering, and yet it can still sort of come together. And so I picked seasonally because I also have just in my own world tried to ground more into the seasons. It's kind of a be here now, be in the moment, and explore what's happening in your world around you, and not be feeling like just begrudging winter, when it comes, something to get through, because I don't know, ideally we're not just trying to get through life, you're making the most out of it. And so I kind of took that, to that seasonal approach, and the plants really help you connect with that, especially when you're growing and harvesting them. And so I just loved the idea that you could have something centered around the season, it makes it more applicable to, everyone, more broadly. And, we make it quite substantial. Typically a magazine might have 10 articles to 15. There's a lot of ads in kind of mass produced magazines.
Yeah.
And, we have 35, 40, 50, depending on the edition. And so we really jam pack those pages with information. But yet it's like this easy read to get through. And so you can kind of take it with you as the 3 months go on of each season. And so that's kind of how we sort of approached it. And then again, just that community piece. Before I launched the magazine, we did, as just Plant Wonder Collective members, we made a couple of bundles to sell, because I thought all these women are always creating free content. Maybe we should think about a way that they could get paid. And, in small startups, like, the pay isn't that much, but it's something. And it just, for some people, it pays for me to buy the materials to make more things, because this is what I love to do. It's a way for their voice to be heard, and that's what they're looking for. So, we opened the magazine up more broadly, but it really is about, fitting as many contributors in as possible to have all those different voices. I mean, we still have a voice of the publication, it is still edited to have a style guide and format, but at the same time, you have all these unique ideas that come from different people. And so, this project kind of came from all of these different angles to be what it
is. Yeah. And I adore the magazine. I think it's so beautifully done. You and I know Anna helps a little bit, but you have help with putting it together and editing, but like you do the heavy lifting for all of these projects. And, that always blows my mind how much work you get done. And, it really is coming from a really pure place, which I so appreciate. It's not just to make money. You're doing it because it's a soul project, and it's naturally flowed through and evolved over time. And again, something I love about the BA, similar to the Plant Wonder Collective, is that you really touch on so many different ways of thinking about plants. So there's a folklore section and a craft section and a recipe kind of baking section, or food section, like kitchen. And there's just so many different avenues to go down when you're exploring each edition. And we here on the podcast love seasonal living. We love working with the wheel of the year and nature-based spirituality, and that definitely is like smattered throughout the magazine as well. So I kind of like that, because it's got a bit of a, dare I say, like witchy little tone to it, which definitely lights me up. And I know that our listeners love that too. And I obviously have posted about it on my social media when the editions are ready to be released. And I think this is great having you on, because I hope that it helps demystify it for someone who maybe didn't fully understand what it was. They can now go and get each edition and really sink their teeth in, make a warm cup of tea and get cozy in the 5-minute window that you have, and, read an article, and maybe it'll inspire you. Because something else we love to do here, and what people love to hear about, is simple, like achievable, kind of low-cost ways that they can weave in the wheel of the year and the seasons, and taking stock of the seasons and celebrating the turn of the seasons with children specifically and as families. And that definitely is something that you offer every single edition of the BA. And so you're in the United States, so the seasons are a little flipped for us here in Australia, for those who listen who are Australian. But I always say, you can just keep it for the next season, or you can read it now, which is what I do, and then store it in the memory bank, or like one of our recent interviewees, guess, Holly, she keeps a folder of stuff. So when she sees something she really loves, she will totally take it out. She's much more organized than me. She'll take it out, she'll put it in a folder, and then she has it to come back to, so that it's ready. Like external brain, and she doesn't ever have to scramble, at the last minute to try to figure out what she's going to do. So there are so many resources, especially for parents in there, if you wanted to take some of those resources and include it in homeschooling or include it in just like a pagan practice. So that's something I wanted to note for people as well.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I've that when I was thinking of all those subsections in mind, I thought the gardener will come for those articles. But then as they're reading that what's in our harvest section, usually we include a recipe, because it's how can you actually work with this plant, and maybe someone comes who's baking and they're like, oh, but I could make a salve because that's, not that far off from cooking. I'm steeping in oil and I'm melting beeswax, and, so I kind of felt like this, plants are so multifaceted, and the ways to work with them are too. And so there are all these different touch points that we can kind of come and learn about them and from them. And it's funny you mentioned the homeschool, because I do have people who use the study circle with their children for homeschool, and articles from the magazine. So I think it does inform families, as well as, filling a personal cup up, so to speak.
It's interesting because the podcast, I actually, if you didn't know, you may know, I inherited this podcast. And so some people will remember the days of Christy. So Christy started this podcast, and then I joined her for a little bit, and then it became just mine. And so it's come so far from where it originally started in a lot of ways. And I see a lot of my content naturally gravitating towards kind of pagan parenting and nature-based seasonal parenting, which is so interesting. And I guess that somewhat reflects the stage of life that I'm in, but it's something that people are looking for, and they're looking for it in a way that, again, is really simplified. It's accessible. It's not crazy expensive. It's fun. And, there's no guide. There's no guide for parenting. We know this. And sure, there's curriculums for homeschool, but if you want to really make it your own and do it in a way that feels really aligned and good for your family, or even schooling in general, because there's learning that happens at home, even if they're in conventional schooling. And so if you want to, make the most of that opportunity, but you don't know where to start, these kind of resources are invaluable. So if people wanted to kind of get involved with the BA or the Plant Wonder Collective, how would they go about that?
So, email, which plantwondercollective@gmail.com, is an easy way to touch base. But of course, DMs on Instagram are totally good too. There's the Plant Wonder Collective handle, and then Botanical Anthology has the underscore in between. Members are welcome to join at any point, like I had mentioned, for Plant Wonder Collective. For the BA, we do have certain application points. So we, over the course of, we're just going with the summer edition coming up soon, we'll be starting our fourth cycle, our fourth year. And so we just launched our spring one, and that was our 12th edition. They're 4 times a year, one at the beginning of each season. And so we've had over 140 contributors. And so some have only participated once, some have participated in almost every one, and so sometimes people take a little break, then they come back. And so I take applications basically right around when one is launching is when I'm taking the application for the next one. And so anyone's welcome to pop their ideas in the application, and we go from there.
And you have all editions available on the Botanical Anthology website. So if people are really curious and they're hearing us talk about this and they want to, weave it into their lives, they can go onto your website and look at all the past editions if they just want to buy them and start to have a play.
Absolutely. So digitally, we have bundles for the season. So you can buy the 3 spring editions, for all 4. Probably should make one to just buy all 12 digital. I haven't done that yet, but maybe I should see if there's
That
a
sparks
way
an idea.
to like zip that file enough to post it. And then I do have those same bundles, and I do have one to buy all 12 of the print edition.
Oh,
and you
wow.
can get that through our website, which so I do by hand the orders for the bundles.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, does it still goes through Amazon, but it does get put, gives us a little more and them a little less.
Yeah.
But I can only ship that in the US, those. But in other countries, like you on your Amazon can find Botanical
Mm-hmm.
Anthology and then place your order directly, and we get a portion of that.
Yeah, so you can definitely still get it a physical copy if you're in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
I do spend a lot of my time back and forthing about, with this in Australia and this in other countries. But you can definitely get that if you'd love a beautiful bookshelf full of Botanical
Mm-hmm.
Anthology magazines. And I have a fun question for you. So, are there any standout articles over the years that you remember that are some of your favorites? I didn't run this through with you beforehand,
Oh,
but are there
oh,
any
wow.
that just really jumped to the forefront of your mind that were, either ones that you wrote or ones that other people wrote that were extra special and stuck with you?
Right. It's so
Because you read
funny.
a lot.
Being on the spot here, I'm having a hard time with some coming out because I today literally am working on my crazy spreadsheet to make the selections for the next edition. So
Yeah.
my head is just jam packed with like
True.
300 ideas
Mm-hmm.
for it. But
Well, I can say some of mine.
oh
So
yeah,
I definitely know there was a really interesting one recently on foot care, wasn't there? That was from Mountain Rose Herbs. And that
yeah.
was really interesting to me because I thought that was such a unique way to work with plants.
Mm-hmm.
Doing, I think it was like a foot mask and a foot soak,
Yeah.
and I thought that was just really fascinating.
I could
I
have used
feel
it
like
today.
I feel like I remember that you've had kind of naturally carbonated herbal like wines and things through
Mm-hmm.
there.
Well, in the
Um,
winter edition, we had a fermented, Colleen from Grow Forage Cook fermented,
mm,
uh, fermented pine needle soda.
yes, that
And
looks so
so,
good.
and she describes it like Sprite. And just that
Huh.
description, I mean, I don't typically drink soda, but I'm like,
Me neither.
wow, that sounds so cool. And I keep meaning, I have pine trees in my yard. I keep meaning to do it. I actually ferment, water kefir grains,
Uh-huh.
and that's kind of the probiotic drink that I drink. I'm like, I should do a second ferment with some pine needles in there just to like experience
Definitely.
this. Uh, but one of the things I was going to say, well, and I could say, we've had a lot of segments over the time, and that is something that really kind of jazzes me when we get like a neat idea that we can explore through all 4 seasons. So we've had the routines of a season by Julia, who's a farm to keep on Instagram. And so she had all these ways that you could care for your body and your home and your garden for each season. And we had a woman, Anne, is Cosmic Earth Remedies. And so she did each season as an element and then
Oh,
incorporated the
wow.
plants into it. And prior
Mm.
to that, she was we did a Wheel of the Year holiday segment. And so she helped contribute to those. And she did herbalism by each side. So she did several
Mm.
features. A woman, Megan, just did, we did Taste of the Season. So that went. And our longest running, which has been going on more than a year, is Zodiac Full Moon Teas.
Yes,
And
I've seen
so
those.
Anna, the herbology fairy, so she'll take, this is the only thing that has a timestamp on it in the edition. And so they really are meant to live on your bookshelf, where you earmark, if you buy the print copy,
Mm-hmm.
where you have those dog ears and you look back to the things that really interested you. but this is the only thing that is relevant very specifically to the year, because she looks at the full moons, which, stay the same. The flower moon is the flower moon. The pink moon is the pink moon. But what sign it is in each is different each year. And so she takes that energy that's happening kind of just regularly in nature, and then that astrology energy from the sign, and mashes them together and comes out with plants that support that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so she has been doing that. And
So
we've
cool.
done polls on Instagram, and people have still, we were like thought of putting, thinking of a new segment for her to do, and people still liked the full moon
And that's
teas.
great for those, again, it's such a simple way, especially if you have some, a little shelf, a little home apothecary, if you will, and you're a tea person. That is such an easy way for you to mark the season and celebrate, because we've been talking about recently, with this kind of nature-based parenting, nature-based spirituality, infusing that with family life, that, you don't always have capacity for, a full celebration. You don't always have the time to make a full feast and, a seasonal food that you've never made before. And to also refresh the altar, and to also do, but what you do have time to do, especially for yourself, or, even the family, if your kids and your husband or your partner will drink tea, is to just make a tea for the full moon, or make a tea for the season. And, Anna's ideas are so lovely. And I always enjoy having a little peruse through her article on that topic. And her pictures are always really sweet too. The pictures are really cool. So that's a great one.
She creates a theme through the pictures too. So it kind of has that continuity of the segment too. Like you can kind of look at it and know this is the tea. And we also, one other segment that I think is kind of fun that I'll share. So this one only happens annually, but Jessie, who is Wineberry Adventure Scouts on Instagram, she does a lot of nature-based learning for children and crafts.
Cool.
Like she has tasked herself with doing a craft with all of our plants if she, if she can. And she hasn't missed too many in the whole time she's participated. And so she created Herbal Summer Camp. And so this will be her 4th installment of summer camp. So we just do it, the once a year, but we did start it in our very first edition. And so she'll have 2 crafts that can be part of a summer camp. And so if you collect all editions, you can actually literally make a camp at this point.
That's amazing. And there are so many great crafts. Like I've seen lanterns, like making lanterns for kids, I think was in there one time. And
that was the autumn birthday last autumn, which you're coming into. And that I was going to say that too, with the seasons are, it was only 6 months ago, not too long ago, that we had published our autumn one. And so there isn't too much that was happening then that I wouldn't publish right now. So I think anyone in the Southern Hemisphere can kind of look back to that more recent edition.
Yeah, so they are seasonal, but it doesn't mean that there aren't articles, even if you just wanted to use it now. Like there's definitely still so many things, because you always say when people are, submitting their ideas to actually be a part of the magazine, that, it can be something seasonal, but if you've got a really cool idea that's just like kind of a timeless piece, then that can definitely go in there, because, these are designed to sit on someone's bookshelf and be turned to time and time again. It's not always, you're not only going to have things that they can specifically make in autumn or fall, in the fall edition, you're going to have things that will inspire them and that people can use throughout the year. And something I love, you talked a little bit earlier about the Botanical Anthology and the Plant Wonder Collective helping to kind of enjoy the seasons a little bit more. And I just wanted to say that definitely, like an observational practice, is something we talk about here a lot. Actually just taking the time to notice what's going on outside of your window. But I found that has really deeply helped my appreciation for the seasons. I used to be a winter hater. And these days I actually really enjoy it, because I really appreciate that it has its place in life, and, that our own life and the seasons of our own life mimic the seasons of nature and the cycles of the earth. And so I can appreciate that descent into the underworld and that time of kind of percolation and reprioritizing and, of shedding and letting go, and then being able to reemerge in the warmer months,
Mm-hmm.
recharged, re-energized, and ready to kind of harness that warm weather. But it really does help. And people are always, again, looking for ways that they can acknowledge the season without having to do a whole song and dance about it. And this just can help to bring that joy back in and connect with the outside world, and
Mm-hmm.
just really love each season of life, love each season throughout the
Yeah.
year. And that's, we're animals. We're all animals. We always talk about that.
Yeah.
So we
We
need
are.
that connection. So this is just a way to do it in a really visually beautiful, enjoyable, little tiny moment of luxury way, that you can just sit down with your magazine and drink one of your full moon teas, let's say, and just take that time for yourself to have that moment to recognize the season and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any plant allies that are close for you? Because you're also a herbalist. You do all of these things, but you were a herbalist first. That's how you got here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
are there any particular plants that you hold quite close?
So when I started my apprenticeship, we started in March, and I had moved to. I had been living in the city, and so I moved in Boston, just outside of, in this little carriage house on the property of my landlord. And so I had a yard space, which I hadn't had in a long time, and also a little garden plot, which was really nice. But and that was my first time planting herbs too. But as you know, in April into May, so I had my first 2 immersion weekends of my apprenticeship under my belt. Violets popped up in my lawn, and it was just like magic to me. Like, oh my gosh, they're so dainty and sweet, and there's so many things I love about the energy of them, but also just like the presence of it there when I was like learning. And so it was that first one that I got to have that physical connection with around me. And I was born in the month of June. And so I don't know, I just had this natural connection to rose and St. John's wort. And I've moved several times. And so every time I move, I need to replant, right? I need to start my garden again. And so I'm always waiting for that moment when there's like a little sigh when my Rosa rugosa plants are finally established to bloom. And I have this plot of St. John's wort that I can go, pluck every day. And, I just love that kind of heart and nervous system kind of nourishment that both of them have. And so those were like my early loves. And then I had finally, a couple of years ago, I was able to finally have an in-person elder little stand at a neighbor's property that they offered for me to harvest from. And it was just like, whoa. And the smell, and
so good.
I love the taste of elderflower syrup. And I had also around that time had planted marshmallow for the first time, and just like the physical plant, the way it kind of it grows tall, it creates this space around it, and the flowers are so pretty, and the leaves are velvety. And then, I like the hydration part. I typically need that of the roots. And so they were kind of like my my next stage loves. And then I kind of try to find a plant to just fall in love with each year. There's something that will just always wow me for a year when you have that first experience. So last year, it wasn't an herb, but it's the plant loofah, which in my climate,
fun.
Yeah, it doesn't typically grow easily here because our season isn't long enough. And I don't even think last year I put seeds in the ground. I think I hadn't even tried this year. And it came out of, I saw a gourd coming out of my bed, like my vining bed that I just kind of toss things in and let them go. And it was coming up. I have these goji plants that have gone wild. and it was coming over, and I just let it go because I thought, I just want to see what you do. And then all of a sudden one day they were hanging, and I was like, is that loofah? I like couldn't even believe it. I thought it was going to be a zucchini. And so it just like wowed me, and I had to harvest it differently than you was typically recommended because of my climate, but I was still able to harvest it and make little soaps or give it as holiday gifts. And I have some in my shower. And so that was just like the really cool experience for me last year.
Oh, that is so fun. I've been trying to grow. When I say trying to grow, I've not planted any seeds. Someone gave me seeds a few years back, and I cannot find any information on when I should plant these plants. No one knows, and I've asked experienced herbalists, and they don't know. So I have to find out when I should plant it around my area. But it's totally my goal to grow loofah because they're so sustainable. I want to use the like once you've dried it out and done the whole process, they, look like a shower loofah. For anyone who's unfamiliar, like you would know a shower loofah, but actually there's a plant, and it kind of does look like a giant zucchini, and
it's wild,
like marrow zucchini.
Yeah, you pull the skin off, and you're like, that was inside. It's crazy. And then there are all these seeds tucked in, and it's very prolific seed producer.
Yes. She gave me so many seeds. They were just from one loofah, but I think you let it dry, don't you? You let it dry on the vine if you can.
Well, yes, that's what it would typically be. Yeah, and mine was, it was not changed because it was going to start freezing, and it hadn't technically fully dried. So I just pulled mine in, but it was still, I was having to use a knife to kind of cut through because it's very firm, more pumpkin-like than zucchini-like, like skin, and just kind of keep peeling and like pulling away those fibers from the skin. And it's just so wild, and it was really one of those meditation in motion experiences because all of the seeds were tucked in. And so I'm just like digging in there, and it has this like slipperiness to it. Not quite like if you were washing marshmallow root or something, but and then you're kind of drying, and then it hardens, and you're like, you look at it and you're like, that's going to hurt. But actually when you moisten it in the shower, I just put a little like the Castile soap that I have, and I use it, and it feels so nice. It does not feel like you're scraping your skin off or anything.
No.
But you could use it as a replacement for, sponges at your sink.
That's what I want it for. Yeah.
And I know here anyway, they say roughly 6 weeks before your last frost to start seeds indoors.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know if your climate would allow for a direct sow, but not here for me.
Probably would. At least definitely where I am is a bit more mild, which is nice. My hometown definitely gets the extremes. So it would be, I don't know if do you work in Fahrenheit?
Yes.
So I'm not really sure what it would be in Fahrenheit, but like negative degrees cold. And then in summer it's like 40 plus degrees Celsius, and it's just really it's very hot in summer, and it's very cold in winter. Whereas where I am now on the mountain, it's a bit more temperate up here, which is nice. But I think that brings me back to one final point that I wanted to make about the magazine, and also what you share through the Plant Wonder Collective is that yes, you can acknowledge the seasons, yes, you can sit down and have your cup of tea and that moment to yourself, but ultimately the part of being on the plant path and wanting to work with plants is to actually work with them. And so I'm sure you would agree that a lot of the point is to actually get people experimenting with their herbs and making tea and making oils and planting seeds and growing them themselves. I always encourage people to try, even in a pot. I have some of my best plants in pots, and even if you don't have a lot of space or time or experience, you could grow one basil plant, or you could grow one parsley. They're so resilient. And just see how many ways you could use that one plant, and find a recipe in one of the magazine editions and use it in there, and just really get that hands-on the plant experience.
I do think there's nothing like it, and that I'm saying that with respect to anyone who doesn't have the ability to do it,
Yes.
or maybe interest. It's totally, unique experience for all of us, how we make the connection. But I definitely have that. When I have that ability to, it's like interacting with a person, if if you are able to interact with them versus just writing a text, how you think about the difference in your relationship. I think, so it totally works to buy a tincture, but if you can make one, even if you're just buying some dried herbs from the bulk bin at your local co-op, it just takes it to that next level. I think.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing about all of the things that you do and some of your plant experiences. And if people wanted to find you, we've mentioned a little earlier, they can go onto the Plant Wonder Collective website, they can email you, they can go on the Botanical Anthology website and buy a magazine, or they can submit to be a part of it if they want to get writing. But is there anything else they should know about how to find you on social media or see what you're up to? You have a Florist Feast account.
Florist Feast is, I don't do the products anymore because I really did pivot to give all of my attention to the magazine and Plant Wonder Collective. So I do keep that Instagram tepidly rolling.
That's kind of your personal Instagram, isn't it?
But it's my personal herbal lens and parenting and astrology and those things that kind of interest me. So I pop on there now and again. So that's, yes, me personally, but otherwise a lot is just directed into Plant Wonder Collective and Botanical Anthology.
Well, I'll be sure to share all of those links in the show description so people can easily find you on all of those platforms. But yeah, thank you again. It's been wonderful to chat to you and finally get to make a connection face to face. I'm excited for people to get to listen to this, and I hope that, it gets them interested in buying a magazine or writing for the magazine, or really ultimately just getting their hands on some plants and having a play and really feeling connected to the cycles of the earth and the wheel as the wheel turns throughout the year. So we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.